wanna take me across town over you. Out of town and I see you slowly going dancing 135K.
Welcome to WECI 91.5 FM, Richmond's public radio. I'm Tyler Smith, host of the Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith Sports Podcast, Sports Talk Show. I'm Tyler Smith. It's 4 p.m. on Friday, December 16th. In Richmond, Indiana, weather 37 degrees outside. Feels like 32 degrees as well. It's a little bit of a cold one out here. A little bit of misty snow every once in a while coming in, little snowflakes, little flurries. Besides that, looking good outside. Today we got a full slate running by myself, unfortunately, today. No guests coming in today, so you just got to listen to me for the next couple hours. But we're going to be talking 49ers Seahawks Thursday Night Football. We're going to be going over the NFL slate for this weekend, Saturday and Sunday games this weekend, in addition to Monday night as well. Going to get into some college bowl season games as well. Talk about the Miami Redhawks loss in their bowl game the other day in the Bahamas Bowl. We're also transitioning into the FIFA World Cup final, which is on Sunday at 10 a.m. And then also moving into the third place match, Croatia versus Morocco, but more focused on that final between Argentina and France, a game of a generation, one would even say. But transitioning, moving into this 49ers Seahawks game last night, quarterback for the 49ers, as many of you guys have heard, whether you listen to sports or not, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. The quarterback of this 49ers squad is the last pick of the draft. The last pick in the 7th round, Mr. Irrelevant is what the title is for that player. Normally, these players do nothing in their NFL careers, which is no slight to them. They got drafted. They were good enough to make the NFL, which is an incredible achievement nonetheless. But normally, these guys just are on a team for a couple of years, bounce around a bit, get cut, something of the sort. But in this case, we have Brock Purdy, who's been balling out for the San Francisco 49ers, a team that is in wildcard contention, let alone Super Bowl contention. As a win last night, won their division, which is absolutely insane. So this means the 49ers are going to be hosting a home playoff game, and their quarterback will be Mr. Irrelevant, who's now been dubbed as Mr. Relevant. Brock Purdy, have yourself a day. Brock Purdy last night, 17 of 26, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The biggest thing right there I see is 0 interceptions. A young quarterback with a lot of inexperience, not really sure what to do. You don't want to force the issue too much with a young quarterback in Brock Purdy. You don't want to put too much on him. But there's a play early on in this game where Brock Purdy takes the snap, fakes left to the motion wide receiver who runs a little bubble orbit route in motion, then flips to the other side, fakes a pass to McCaffrey on a little outside route, and then slips the ball down the middle to George Kittle for a touchdown. Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit even made the point last night to point out this man is not a guy who's in his second career start, let alone third appearance in an NFL game. He looked like a guy who was a multi-year NFL veteran, which really means a lot and speaks to how good Brock Purdy actually is. And as well as a tip of the hat and a compliment to Coach Kyle Shanahan of the 49ers, I think, as well. That's the bigger story, in my opinion. But Brock Purdy is doing a fine enough job and doing a good enough job, too. It's not like he's being kind of carried by this team. Don't get me wrong. His team around him is extremely talented, but he's not just handing the ball off 50, 60 times a game. You know, last night they ran the ball 36 times. And running the ball 36 times, McCaffrey got 26 of those. Jordan Mason got 4. And Brock Purdy got 4. And a couple of receivers got a couple touches in the running game as well. Normally you'd see Deebo Samuel featured there, but Deebo Samuel was injured last night. But Christian McCaffrey has been a weapon for this team, and Brock Purdy's kind of go-to man, him and George Kittle, as anyone would. But Brock Purdy is doing a fantastic job so far, in my opinion. Brock Purdy very well could win the starting job for this 49ers squad moving into next season, especially if they make a deep playoff run. It could be a tough time in San Francisco because you would have 3 quarterbacks that want to play for you outside of whoever in free agency wants to come play for you as well. But you're going to have 3 guys who were in-house, quote unquote, with Jimmy Garoppolo going into free agency, but 3 guys who were in-house in Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Jimmy Garoppolo. The major difference, Brock Purdy is extremely cheap, being that last pick in the draft. Trey Lance is on some guaranteed money because he was a first-round draft pick and an early draft pick as well. And Jimmy Garoppolo would just be an expensive free agent veteran signing. No shame. Kyle Shanahan, just right off of Twitter here right now, just got the notification, calls Brock Purdy the most poised rookie I've ever had. And Kyle Shanahan has been coaching for quite some time and has coached quite a few legends throughout his time as well. And it just speaks to the volumes of success and the gravitational pull Brock Purdy has around this locker room. Brock Purdy is going to be a guy I think we need to look out for in the future. I don't think he's going to be one of these quarterbacks that kind of just falls off and is like a backup as a game or two and then just moves along and kind of falls off and slips back into the backup role. Brock Purdy has done an exceptional job. Brock Purdy, in his first career start, destroyed Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. And I mean absolutely destroyed Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brock Purdy in that game, granted, it was his first start. He didn't have to do too much, but this team around him absolutely helped him, and he's doing a fine job as a game manager. He's not going to be a guy who's going to lose you the game, which is the most important thing. You don't want your quarterback to lose the game for you. In this game for the 49ers versus the Buccaneers, he had a very similar stat line as he did last night. Last night versus the Seahawks, 17 of 26, 217. Versus the Buccaneers, 16 of 21 for 185. Granted, you have to think about it a little bit. They got up big on the Buccaneers, so they ran the ball a bit more. Granted, that was a 28-point win, whereas last night was only an 8-point win against the Seahawks team that looked abysmal in my opinion. But really what we're seeing a lot of what's happening here is Brock Purdy and that 49ers scheme, that Shanahan-built scheme, is going to lead to a ton of success for him. You have guys around you such as Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle who are just weapons nonstop all over the field. Christian McCaffrey last night himself, 108 yards on the ground, 4.2 average, and then turned around and had 30 yards in the air as well, receiving on 6 attempts and 6 completed passes and 6 receptions. And then you have George Kittle on the other hand, 4 catches, 93 yards, 2 tugs. If you can do this every game, you're going to have success. Turn around, get the ball to McCaffrey, who's one of the best running backs in the league. Everyone's been hating and sleeping on him due to his injury history, but this man is electric and phenomenal. He is one of the best running backs in this league. It has been since the day he got drafted. In my opinion, he's always been that guy. In fantasy drafts as well, if you pay attention to fantasy, he's a guy who goes top 3, top 4 because of his ability and his skills. He can be a receiver. He can be a running back. He can do it all. He is effective out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot as a traditional wide receiver or just motion him out. The opportunities here with this 49ers offense are endless, and that only helps Brock Purdy. Then you have George Kittle as well, who can go down and block as a tight end, support the running game, be practically a 6th offensive lineman in certain situations and certain circumstances. But then also you can put George Kittle on a little delay fade like we saw last night in the play where Brock Purdy looked left, looked right, and then slipped it down the middle. A little delay fade, fake block for a second, then slip out, and it's a touchdown. As well, there are going to be times where there's busted coverage, and that's how they succeed. They got a George Kittle touchdown on a busted coverage play, and you're going to have to take those when you get them. The only mistake I saw Brock Purdy make last night was he threw a ball over the middle, looked a defender, tried to look a defender off, but actually looked the defender into the route across the middle of the field, and Quandre Diggs came up down the middle, should have intercepted it, in my opinion, hit him right in the hands, did not catch it, so it goes from 3rd down to 4th down. The 49ers going to punt. Didn't hurt them there. But that's really the only mistake you could point at Brock Purdy for making in the last 2 games of his NFL starting career. If you could tell me that in your first 2 starts in the NFL, you only make 1 true mistake like that could have been game-changing, you take that as a head coach, you take that as a fan. Brock Purdy out of Iowa State had offers from Alabama, had offers from the big-time schools, but wanted to kind of choose a different path. He could have been selected a lot earlier on if he went to a school like in Alabama or whatever and could have gotten more show. He's a guy, in my opinion, who was more talented than Stetson Bennett in college, and Stetson Bennett was just in the Heisman conversation. For better or not, I don't think Stetson Bennett should have been there, in my opinion, but he was there nonetheless. And I think Brock Purdy was better than Stetson Bennett in college. As well, if you take a moment to look around, you're going to have guys on this team that just take care of the ball. And that 49ers defense is complimentary as it can get. The 49ers defense, one of the best defenses in the league, top 5 defense in the NFL. If you can have a 49ers team that can put up legit points and score on offense, while a 49ers defense just shut down the opponent's offense and just absolutely destroy them in every single phase of the game, it's crazy. 20 points in their last 2 games allowed in the NFL. It's insane. You don't see that every day. In the NFL, offenses average 24 to 35 points a game. But now the 49ers have allowed only 20 in the last two. Now they're into the playoffs, won their division, and now they're just going to fight for seeding from this point on. See if they can get to a bye, things like that. But this 49ers team is going to be dangerous. This 49ers team is somebody that you need to look out for. If you would have asked everybody 3-4 weeks ago that Brock Purdy would be the quarterback of the 49ers, would you be scared facing them in the playoffs? The answer would have been a resounding no. A resounding no. Nobody would have been fearing them. But now, teams are looking at this 49ers squad, and there's like, I don't want to play this team. They're a team that's rolling. Since McCaffrey joined the 49ers, undefeated. That's how good Christian McCaffrey is. He can make a team undefeated. He can change the way the team goes, change the momentum, change the way everything goes for you. So that just speaks to the volumes of how successful he really is and how strong McCaffrey is as a ball player. But now we're going to switch over to the Seahawks side of things. The Seahawks side of things, extremely depressing last night. If you're a Seahawks fan, Seattle fan, Geno Smith supporter, etc., just a really poor showing in my opinion. Just not good anywhere in this game. Just a lot of bad choices around. Just not good at all, in my personal opinion. This Seahawks team was extremely underwhelming. A team fighting for a playoff berth, fighting, struggling, scrapping to get a playoff berth. And that's what this team has done all year. Just been scrappy and worked hard. Gotten some bounces to go their way. With Geno Smith as their quarterback, no longer do they have Russell Wilson. For better or for worse, seeing how Russell Wilson's playing this year. But this Seahawks team is just now 7-7, middle of the road. They're a team that a win last night changes their kind of destiny of the season. It kind of secures them as a playoff team, I think, if they win last night. Gets the momentum going their way. But you only get 13 points on the night, 2 field goals and a touchdown late, kind of a junk touchdown more or less. It's not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it. Geno Smith last night, 31 of 44, 238 yards, 1 touchdown. Got sacked quite a bit, got hit quite a bit. That offensive line was kind of selling him out quite a bit at times. And as well, it felt like Geno Smith was kind of dancing in the pocket a little too long sometimes. Geno Smith is a guy who's pretty mobile. If you remember, looking back to his college days at West Virginia and then moving on now in the NFL, he's been a guy, he's not a run-first quarterback by any stretch, but he's definitely a guy who can move and evade some pressure. And we didn't see that last night with a strong defensive line of the 49ers, especially seeing Bosa just coming after him nonstop all night long. I really think the Seahawks team is wheeling right now. They're reeling right now, trying to find a way to make things happen. They're just struggling. They're on the ropes, trying to figure it out. They're entering kind of the final stretch here, 7-7, 14 games down, 3 to go. You could turn this to a 10-7 season or a 7-10 season or anywhere in between. And it's just not going to cut it. I don't think the Seahawks team will. Last night as well, Kenneth Walker, 12 carries, 47 yards, 3.9 average. What came into the game a little banged up. But what killed this team last night were missed opportunities for the Seahawks. As I mentioned earlier, Quandre Diggs' interception dropped. That's a momentum changer. Granted, you get the ball in that punt, but just a momentum swing of you get an interception, a young quarterback on the road at one of the historically loudest stadiums in the NFL. And then on the following possession, once you receive the punt from the 49ers, you start working down the field, you get some momentum, and then you fumble. You fumble late in that first half, giving the ball right back to the 49ers with a little less than a minute to go, and they score a touchdown on that preceding drive. That takes the wind out of your sails. And then you make a massive play with DK Metcalf. Throw him a deep ball. Go up and get it. Just, my guy's better than you. I'm throwing this ball up and he gets it. But DK Metcalf, offensive pass interference, grabs the corner shoulder pads on the back of his neck, rips him to the floor as he goes up. Sneaky play, I'll give him that. Like, it was good technique. Like, if you're going to try and get away with one, that was a good way to try and get away with one, but didn't get away with it. Obviously, the flag was thrown. But more or less, it was just an abysmal performance from the Seahawks team, in my personal opinion. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf led the receiving game. Lockett, 7 receptions, 68 yards. DK Metcalf, 7 for 55. And those are 2 all-pro wide receivers. Got limited to 68 and 55 yards. You limited their 2 best receivers to what? Little shy of 130, maybe a little over 130, do some quick math there. But really, those two guys need to have a better game. Geno Smith needs to do better for them, because if you're going to beat teams like the 49ers, those two need to show up and show out every single down, every single snap, and just absolutely light it up in every single phase of the game. And they truly didn't do that last night, which was extremely disappointing in my opinion, because those two guys are someone you should be excited about every single play. They're just that go-to guy. You have Tyler Lockett, that's more of the underneath. I'm going to catch every single ball I get to, possession catch a lot. Just get me to the first down marker. I'm going to catch it and fall forward. Guy like that. Or if you can get him underneath, he's going to try and make a play. DK Metcalf, that deep threat. Calvin Johnson-esque early comparisons to him, just for the physical size and ability they have. Don't think DK Metcalf is as talented or as great as Calvin Johnson. I think he has some room to grow. But DK Metcalf physically is like that, 6'3", 6'4", maybe even 6'5", I believe. And just absolutely massive. Yeah, 6'4", and I want to say 250, 240, somewhere in there. You're nearing like LeBron James size. That's like a massive receiver in the NFL, who's just athletic, speedy, strong. It's crazy. He's a talented dude who just can do more for this team, I think. And looking at his stats in the season, like DK Metcalf, I know it's not him fully because it's up to the quarterback play, but only 2 games over 100 yards receiving. That's not cutting it. That truly isn't cutting it. If you look at a guy like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, things like that, these guys go for 100 yards consistently. I mean, every single game, day in, day out. If you look at Justin Jefferson, he has a 223-yard performance against the Lions. And then versus the Patriots, 139 yards. Bills, 193. Commanders, 115. Dolphins, 107. Bears, 154. Saints, 147. Packers, 184. So just looking at him quickly, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games over 100 yards. And 2 of those are, one's 200 plus and another is near 200. Then he has a handful of games, 95 to 99 yards. That is what we need to see from DK Metcalf. I understand DK Metcalf doesn't have a quarterback that Kirk Cousins is, or the coach Kevin O'Connell is. Kevin O'Connell, a little bit more of an offensive genius. Pete Carroll, kind of an all-around coach in my opinion. But looking at him, you got to get this better. You got to find a way. You must find a way if you're DK Metcalf, Pete Carroll, in this Seahawks team. You must find a way to get him over 100 yards consistently, or nearing the 100-yard mark as well. And then if you move over to Tyler Lockett's stats are just a little iffy as well. I mean, he's overperforming DK Metcalf, but he shouldn't be. DK Metcalf is the better receiver. Better build, better speed, better everything. And DK Metcalf is a little bit younger and has a much higher ceiling. We have Tyler Lockett here with a 128-yard performance against the Rams on December 4th. October 9th, the Saints, 104 yards, and 107 against the 49ers week 2. So that's 3 games, 100 yards plus. And outside of those games, not nearing the 100-yard mark ever as well, not getting above 70. It's just not good enough. It truly is just not good enough from Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And I know you can kind of point the finger at the quarterback play, but Geno Smith hasn't had a horrible year. He's had a respectable year. So you just got to get better, in my opinion, and just efficiency as well. If you look down at the efficiency stats in the game, both teams over 15 first downs, 49ers with 15, Seahawks with 16. But first downs don't always tell the whole story because you can have big chunk plays and things like that going on. But what I like to look at is third down efficiency a lot. It tells you how confident a team is on offense, how if they're getting good sets. You know, you don't always have to get 10 yards in the first play. You don't always have to get 10 in the second. You can do 4 and 4, 4 and 3, and things like that, and make it close. Third and manageable, a thing you hear a lot on Sundays and Saturdays. Third and manageable. You don't need to put in third and long. Third and manageable gives you a lot of options. You can run, you can pass, etc. So last night, 49ers 6 of 13 on third downs, Seahawks 4 of 13. And then total plays, even about 61. But you have to look here. Oddly enough, both teams punted over 6 times, which you don't see too often in the NFL. But Geno Smith sacked 3 times. And then penalties as well hurt the Seahawks. Giving up nearly 80 yards on penalties and fumbling is just not good enough. It's not good enough. And it's not going to cut it. The Seahawks currently are a team on the outside looking in. They're just not cutting it, in my personal opinion, of what they should be. They're having a much stronger season than expected, I would say. But once they started succeeding early on, the expectation became that they should be into the playoffs. Right now, they're on the outside of looking in, first team out. They're the 8th team in the NFC. But this is also, projected as of right now. So as of today, if the playoffs ended today, we still haven't played the games on Saturday and Sunday this week. We haven't finished the week. But right now, as it looks, Eagles are the number 1 seed, 49ers are the 3, Vikings are the 2, Bucks are the 4, Cowboys are the 5, Commanders are the 6, Giants are the 7. So there is some things up to change. There's 5 spots available. But what really hurts the Seahawks here is the Eagles clinched the NFC East, 49ers clinched the NFC West. So the South and North are up for grabs. So now we go down to 4 because Vikings are going to get the NFC North bid. So now we're 4 teams available. Probably the Buccaneers are going to get the South. So now it cuts you to 3 teams available. So then you need to be better than the Cowboys, Commanders, and Giants. Cowboys 10-3. I think the Cowboys are kind of a safe bet here already. So really the last 2 playoff spots, in my opinion, are going to be between Washington Commanders, New York Giants, Seattle Seahawks, the Lions. You could argue the Packers. I don't think the Packers are going to make it, unfortunately. There's always that little chance with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback that things could get turned around, things could happen, things could go better. But personally, I don't think it's going to happen. But the biggest question mark here is how will the Seahawks finish out? That is the most questionable thing here. The Seahawks, in an extent, control their own destiny, funny enough, because they just got to keep winning. If they keep winning, they'll be able to make it. But the better question is, can they continue to win? They have the Chiefs, Jets, and Rams. So looking at that, I think they go 2-1. I think the Chiefs will beat the Seahawks. I think they can beat the Jets, and I think they could beat the Rams. They could beat the Rams. But you also have to look, those 2 games later on this year, Jets, Seahawks, Seahawks, Rams, neither of those games are gimmies for the Seahawks side. They're toss-ups. If Mike White is back for the Jets on January 1st, the Jets could get him. And if the Rams, Baker Mayfield getting more time in this team, getting more settled in, maybe hearing a little bit of a nod, like, hey, you might be the guy of the future here, kind of fighting for his NFL career, Baker Mayfield can beat the Seahawks. It's just a tough ask for the Seattle Seahawks team. Nothing is going to be given to you. And I think you're already guaranteed a loss versus the Chiefs on December 24th, Christmas Eve. But that's where it comes down to for the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks are going to need to figure this out. And a team that got to show it off on prime time, prime video, Thursday Night Football, didn't show well. Did not show well in the slightest. And as we sneak over to the AFC playoff picture, a lot of important contests this weekend. You had the 10-3 Bills in the AFC East, taking on the Dolphins, who are the 6th seed currently, 8-5, and the 2nd in the AFC East. That game is going to be a big one. And the Bills are bringing the Dolphins to Buffalo. It's supposed to be super cold, projected anywhere between 7 to 12 inches of snow. And if you're the Buffalo Bills, I know the weather doesn't help you. Having that kind of weather isn't going to help your play style by any means. But having that weather, you're more adjusted to it. You're more accustomed to it than the Miami Dolphins. And I think that's going to play a massive kind of mind game in this one. So I think the Bills are going to be able to win that one and kind of slow down this Dolphins team, kind of secure that AFC East and potentially the number 1 seed. I think they're going to be safe. I think the Bills will be a 1 or 2 seed, but a win this weekend's huge. Just to continue staying in the chase for that one spot, because the Kansas City Chiefs have the Texans, and that should be a team that the Kansas City Chiefs roll all over, as the Texans are 1-11-1 currently. And then looking at the 3, the Baltimore Ravens, who are 9-4, and the Bengals, who are 9-4. And if you're a Bengals fan, you're cheering on the Browns this week, because guess what? Lamar Jackson out again. Lamar Jackson out again. The Browns must win this one. It's a must win for the Browns, and a must win Browns win for any Bengals fan out there. And if I had Chase here, who's host of Cut to Chase Sports Podcast, he'd be saying the exact same thing right now. Cincinnati Bengals need to take care of business against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 6-7. And then they need to be paying attention to that Browns game. Make sure the Browns win. Share the scouting report. Do what you need. I don't care. You need to find ways to make sure this Browns team wins versus the Baltimore Ravens. And if that happens, Bengals win. They jump to 10-4. Ravens lose. They drop to 9-5. Guess who's in the number 1 in the AFC North? The Cincinnati Bengals. And they jump to be the 3 seed and fighting for a 1 or 2 seed in the NFL playoffs on the AFC side of things. Because if they win this week, they'll jump to 10-4. And then you have the Chiefs 10-3, Bills 10-3. And if you're a Bengals fan, that's a good place to be. Because if you keep winning, you could be a 1 or a 2 seed and get in a playoff bye. Let alone if you don't get to a playoff bye, you're hosting a playoff game, which is massive for the Bengals. Back-to-back home playoff games, home playoff berths. It'd be a fun one for a Cincinnati Bengals fan. And then you move on, looking down the rest of the playoff picture. The Titans are the 4 seed, 7-6 in the AFC South. That's pretty much a given. They're going to have that one. The AFC South has been abysmal this year. Extremely disappointing. Colts, Texans, Titans. It's not been a good look for the AFC South, to say the least. And the Jaguars, 5-8. Excuse me. But Jaguars are the closest competition, I guess, for the AFC South. But they're not going to catch the Titans, in my opinion. And then if you move on, the 6 and 7 spot gets awfully crowded. Because you have the 8-5 Dolphins, the 7-6 Patriots, the 7-6 Chargers, the 7-6 Jets. So I think the Jets, Chargers, Patriots, Dolphins are all fighting for 7-6. And I think the Bengals are secure at this 5 spot, but they're just trying to keep out of that 6-7 spot, though, too. Like, the Bengals are in that fight, but I think they're above the fight. But they're still there. They're still there, but they'll be able to escape it more likely than the other teams. But that's 6 and 7, the Dolphins, Patriots, Chargers, Jets. Those are 4 teams hungry to make it. You have the Dolphins with first-year head coach Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and a handful of other guys on that team. The Patriots with Mac Jones, Bill Belichick, Hunter Henry, and many, many other weapons on that team, and a lot of names that you won't know of, just because that's how Bill Belichick goes, getting these unknown guys who are going to do the job and complete the task. Then you have the Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. This Chargers side, the other Bosa brother as well. This Chargers side, if you remember last year, if they tied the Raiders in the final week of the regular season, they would have made the playoffs. But they allow a first down conversion late. Derek Carr and the Oakland Raiders know that they're safe, so they run it a little bit more. Come down to 2 seconds on the clock. Derek Carr calls timeout. They send the field goal kicking team in. Daniel Carson puts it through. Eliminates the Chargers from the playoffs. So that's what we're seeing here. A team that 2 seconds away, a field goal away, a third down stop away from the playoffs last year. Then you have a New York Jets team, a young team, a hungry team, who's had 3 different quarterbacks play for him this year. And Zach Wilson going to be getting the start this weekend as Mike White suffers from a broken rib, most likely after getting clobbered in the Buffalo Bills game. And you have Joe Flacco, the old veteran who just can't move, and just people are saying he can't cut it anymore. He can't sling it anymore. That's okay back up to half. But the bigger story for them, this is Zach Wilson's final shot, a lot of people are saying. A lot of New York Jets fans, a lot of New York media. New York is a tough place to play as a young man, as a young quarterback in this league. And they might run him out of town if he doesn't get the job done this weekend versus the Lions. And I wouldn't be too quick to say the Jets will beat the Lions. This Lions team, although their defense has been quite abysmal in moments, this Detroit Lions team has an extremely good offense that can play with some of the best. So this Lions team is no slouch. We're going to transition after we took a moment to look at that playoff picture. We're going to move over. We're going to look at some of the games in the NFL slate this weekend. This weekend, since there's not a lot of college football going on, the NFL is going to take over that Saturday slate. We're going to have the Colts and Vikings kicking off at 1 on Saturday, Ravens Browns at 4:30, I believe, on Saturday afternoon, and then we're going to have the night game between the Dolphins and the Bills on Saturday night. That'll be a fun one to watch for you NFL fans. National televised game, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, cold, 7 inches of snow, all up in Buffalo, which is always a good place to watch a game on the television from. So we're going to have the Colts and the Vikings. Right now, Minnesota's favored by 3.5, opened up at 5.5. Colts recently signed veteran that's kind of been out of the game for a little bit, but T.Y. Hilton brought him back. Not sure how much usage he will see in this game, but very well could see some significant usage. Jeff Saturday, former Colts legend. T.Y. Hilton is Colts legend, now back into the team. Will be interesting to see how they use T.Y. Hilton, versus the Minnesota Vikings, who are led by Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Kevin O'Connell, and many others, with Patrick Peterson in that defensive secondary, as well as Harrison Smith and more. This Vikings team is a strong team. They're 10-3, taking on kind of the depleted Colts, who are 4-8-1. Jeff Saturday coaching for his job, who knows? Interim head coach, not sure if he wants a future in the NFL or not. People don't know what's going on there. Is he just kind of a connection coach, that in-between coach, that interim coach that just gets you through the season and you say, hey, thanks, man, for your service. We'll catch you later. Or we'll say, hey, Jeff, you did a fantastic job this year, or did a good enough job with what we gave you. Let's bring you back for another round. And Chris Ballard, trying to save his job as general manager of the Indianapolis Colts as well. This is a game where the Colts have a ton of pressure on them, and the Vikings just need to show up and deliver. And I think that's the biggest thing here. Vikings just show up and deliver at home. I think the Vikings are going to win this one. I'd even choose them to cover the 3.5-point line. I think the Vikings win this game by a touchdown to 14 points. So if you want to take an alternate out there on 10 points for the Minnesota Vikings to win by, I like the Minnesota Vikings a lot in this one. Kirk Cousins has been wheeling and dealing this year. This game also not in prime time for those of you wondering. So Kirk Cousins will be playing good. He struggles in those primetime games, but Kirk Cousins is a guy to look out for in this one. I think he'll have a big game. I think Justin Jefferson will have a strong game against a weaker secondary. And then Dalvin Cook will turn it on later in the run game as the Vikings just try and run this one out. Then you look at the Browns and the Ravens. A big game in the AFC North. 4:30 kickoff. Currently, Cleveland favored by 2.5. Was originally 3. But you're not going to see much change there. That's just kind of semantics moving along there, just because a little bit more money came in on the Baltimore Ravens. And then you also saw Lamar Jackson recently get hurt. But they also didn't expect Lamar Jackson to play. So just a little bit of coverage there just in case he showed up. But Lamar Jackson not getting the start for the Browns, not for the Ravens. And Deshaun Watson making his home debut for the Browns. Deshaun Watson, a guy to watch out for. I think he could have a big game in his home debut. And if he has a big game in his home debut, that'd be amazing for Browns fans and Cincinnati Bengals fans. The biggest thing I need to see from Deshaun Watson is the rust kind of getting off of him. I need to see him complete passes, show off the deep ball a little bit, be a bit more mobile, things like that. But he's also going to have Nick Chubb in his backfield. He'll also have Kareem Hunt in that backfield. So he has some help there that can help get the job done, help him get accustomed to moving along a bit more, which would be great to see for him. This Ravens team, I think the Ravens have the better head coach because they have Harbaugh. I think he's a much better coach than the Browns. I think that's the only thing kind of pushing me away from the Browns a little bit here. But it's a tough pick. This one is a game I kind of stay away from if I was gambling on it. But I do not gamble because I am a college athlete. NCAA if you hear that. But really, if I'm looking here, if I'm you, giving you some advice, I'd stay away from this game. But if I had to give you a pick, I'd be looking at the Browns to probably cover this game, unfortunately. Because it's just, you want to see a good game, but I think the Browns will cover it. I think the Browns, it's unfortunate because you never want to see the Browns win if you're a Bengals fan. I know a lot of you guys out there within the region, with a lot of the listeners here today, are Bengals fans. They're from the Cincinnati area, or from the Ohio area, or from Richmond, Indiana, where you're kind of between Colts and Bengals. You don't know who to choose. Or somehow you may be a Cleveland Browns fan. But really, if you're a Browns fan, if you're a Bengals fan, you're gambling on the Browns. You're hoping that the Browns win. You're cheering for the Browns, and I think they will win the game at home in Deshaun Watson's home opener, home debut. I think the Browns will win this one. And I think they do cover, because obviously that line at 2.5, they win. Even if it's by a field goal, they cover. I think this game could be very well low scoring. I think this game could be like a 17-14 ball game, or 23-20, something of the sort. But really, this is going to be a low scoring ball game, kind of a boring game to watch as well, I think. But I do give the Browns a slight advantage. And if you're a Bengals fan, you're cheering for the Browns all day in this one. And then we're going to move over to that Saturday night game, which is kind of crazy to say. Saturday night kickoff, 8:15, I believe that one's going to be kicking off at. Bills-Dolphins. The weather in this one is going to be massive. I think the weather is the biggest story here. The weather, if it's snowing, if it's just cold, etc., if it's windy, I think that all has massive effects in this one. If it's cold, if it's wet, if it's snowing, if it's windy, I'm going with the Bills. If this was a beautiful game, played in sunshine and rainbows, 75 degrees, down wherever, I think the Dolphins will be able to get it. But I think with the weather that we're going to be seeing, I'm going to give it to the Bills. And then in this one too, if games between the past, if it's going to be a windy one, I don't think you're going to see a lot of field goals being kicked as well. I'm going to pull up the Buffalo forecast real quick. But if you remember the game last year between the Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots last year, where it was just kind of a breezy game, super windy game, like 40, 50 mile an hour winds and some snow. It was just impossible. You couldn't throw. You had to run everything. And you just went for it on fourth down because you couldn't really throw out your punter as well. There were punts that went 5 yards in that one. But looking at the game here for you all, nothing too crazy with the wind in Buffalo. It's going to be between 10 to 14 mile an hour winds, temperature 33, 27. And there's going to be some definite snow in this one for sure. Looking at about a 60, 70% of snow in this one. And looking at Buffalo, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills because they have a more dominant run game, I think. And they're more accustomed to that cold weather. We've seen Coach Mike McDaniel wearing a shirt, kind of a homemade shirt with some Sharpie on it kind of thing, saying, I wish it were colder, trying to get that psychological advantage going for his Dolphins players. We even saw earlier this week clips from NFLfilms.com, NFL Films, social media, etc., with Buffalo Bills players wearing parkas underneath their shoulder pads and things during practice. So they're feeling the cold too. But I think that they've been outside practicing in the cold this entire time. I think it's going to give them a little bit of an advantage. They're more used to it. They've been able to game plan this entire week for the weather. Same as the Dolphins, but they've been doing it in the weather. I think that's a big difference in this one. So I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. The current line is 7 points for the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's favored by 7. Opened up at 6.5. But I really think the Buffalo Bills are going to win this one. The line's a little daunting here. Especially seeing that 7 number. It's kind of a big number in a cold weather game like this. But I'm going to lean to the Buffalo Bills in this one. I think they could cover 7 points. They could win this by 2 scores on a late jump touchdown or something like that. I'm really leaning with the Buffalo Bills. I'd stay away from the spread on this one personally. I would just choose Buffalo Bills money line, just outright win. But really, if you're going to look at this one, I think the Buffalo Bills are going to win it. And then we'll move on to Sunday. First few games on Sunday, you have Steelers and Panthers. Panthers, a team that's been tanking this year, you could argue, firing their head coach, trading away their quarterback, trading away their best player, Christian McCaffrey, releasing Baker Mayfield, things like that. This Panthers team's kind of been in shambles recently throughout recent history, since the Cam Newton days even. And then they're also taking on the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. The game opened up, Pittsburgh favored 2.5. And now Carolina's favored by 3. So big shift there. That is a 5.5 point spread, which is pretty crazy to see going on right now. 5.5 point spread. that means that Vegas has seen a lot of things change in here, and they really like the Panthers now. But I'm not too sure if I like the Panthers in this one personally. I really think the Steelers could win this one. I think a quarterback in Kenny Pickett's getting some growth, getting some things going right for him finally. And I really think Kenny Pickett can make it happen. The biggest question is health. But unfortunately, what we're seeing here, I think, is Kenny Pickett started the week as questionable, and now he's been moved into doubtful. So Kenny Pickett is kind of the reason why that line's moved so much. So we're going to see Mitch Trubisky get the start. You could be a person that looks like, hey, Mitch Trubisky's done it before. He's been a starter before. And backup quarterbacks tend to have some success as well. But looking at this one, Carolina by 3. It's a tough pick. It's a very tough pick in my personal opinion. I think I might go with the Steelers on this one. The reason being, just Mitch Trubisky, something about him with that backup experience he's had this year, being a starter in the past, might just try and turn it on for a game here. And the Panthers might just be coming out a little bit too lax, thinking they have a backup quarterback in. And this week, they've been having to prep for Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky because Kenny Pickett wasn't ruled out until earlier on today, about 3-4 hours ago. So I think that Steelers have a shot in this one. And I like Mike Tomlin. I like Mike Tomlin as a head coach. He's a veteran head coach. Never had a losing season in his entire NFL coaching career. So I'm going to bet on the man who's been an incredible head coach throughout his time in the NFL, and Mike Tomlin here to get the win. And then Carolina -3. I think we're going to go with the Steelers as well on the spread because the Steelers win. They're going to be covering that as well, obviously, because Carolina's favored. So they get some points there if they lose by 1 or 2. But I think, obviously, the Steelers win. Go ahead and do the money line for the Steelers, do the spread as well for the Steelers too. And then we're going to transition into kind of a cold game as well. Bears-Eagles at Chicago. The Philadelphia Eagles were initially favored -8, and now it's moved to -9. It's a big line. 9 points in the NFL is a lot of points. We're taking a look here. We have Jalen Hurts versus Justin Fields, potentially. 2 young guys, 2 great players. In Justin Fields' biggest story, he's about to near the 1,000-yard rushing mark as a quarterback, which is extremely impressive. I think that is a massive milestone. That's something that we don't even see running backs hit in the NFL that are starters. So doing it as a quarterback while also being an effective passer is extremely impressive. But I think that the Eagles are just too good in this one. I just think the Eagles are too good, personally. And I think at the 9 points as well, over-under is 48.5. So they're thinking that this game is going to be somewhere, 48.5, so 24-24. They're going to take away 9 from each side. It's going to be like 33-15, somewhere in that. They're saying 35-12. Like, it's just a weird line, weird points there. Ready to do as well. So I'm going to go Eagles here, cover the line, and as well get the win. I really like this Eagles team. They're rolling, they're grooving. Jalen Hurts is doing a fine job. Miles Sanders doing a great job. They get Dallas Goedert back from injury this week as well. Officially came off the injury reserve. They have a couple weeks to get him activated. They're talking about working them in slow this week potentially. And I think that's a big get back for this Eagles team. And I think the Eagles will win this one. And then we're going to move into Chiefs and Texans. Now, this is where we have Vegas make some lines that I personally despise. Chiefs and Texans. The Texans 1-11-1. Chiefs are 10-3. The spread opened up at Kansas City -14, and it's still Kansas City -14 as we talk right now. 14 points in the NFL. They think the Chiefs win this game by 2 touchdowns. That's personally one I don't like to do a lot. I think 14, 2 touchdowns, winning by that is a lot, especially on the road. Nonetheless, this Chiefs and Texans game is going to be kind of tricky betting-wise, and obviously to an extent, I think the Chiefs will win this one for sure. No question about it. But seeing that the Texans have ruled out running back Dameon Pierce, one of their best receivers, Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Derek Stingley, like 4 of their best players right there ruled out. It's just a tough game, especially with all those injuries. I think what we're going to see here is just a team, the Chiefs, who have so many weapons. I mean, so many weapons. It's just unreal the amount of weapons they have. All the guys they have. Kadarius Toney stepping into a bigger role, but probably will be limited. Coming into this one, I think Kadarius Toney is going to be limited. There have been too many reports on him yet, but just kind of hurt and banged up over the last few weeks. There's no need to rush him back for the Texans. So I think MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, could have a big game for him. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs here. 14 points is a lot. It's something I'd stay away from. But just with all those injuries, this is a game that I think it would be okay to bet the Kansas City Chiefs at minus 14, just seeing how many injuries there are for the Texans. And then the Texans just have struggled. People calling for Lovie Smith's job. He's the head coach for the Texans. And you have Davis Mills, who's just kind of been out here trying, but then Pep Hamilton doing some tricky things too, running a 2-quarterback system. It's a gimmicky team. They're just trying to figure out something to do. They don't know what to do. They're just trying to throw things out there, trying to save their jobs, honestly, which is crazy to say. But Davis Mills is going to be the kind of the lead starter, obviously. But we're going to see the Kansas City Chiefs just outright dominate this team. The only way Kansas City Chiefs don't get to 14 is if they start running the ball like crazy and they just don't get to the end zone with the run. But I think their run game's strong enough where they will find the end zone at least once, and they're going to run it once they get up a touchdown with the passing game. So I think the Kansas City Chiefs will win this one and will cover that by 14. I traditionally don't like to pick by 14, but this Texas team is extremely poor, extremely depleted. So that's the only way I would advise that one. Then we're going to move into the Cowboys and Jaguars game. Cowboys, a team that's shown that they can go, a team that can drop 50 on a week, and then also tank it out and drop a goose egg. And the Jaguars coming off a massive week last week as well. Jaguars last week had a big game. Evan Ingram balled out, showed out. Nonetheless, the tight end. It's just a team, though, the Jaguars, I'm not sure what to see from them consistently. The Jaguars won last week 36-22 over the Titans. It's just a team that they're a little intriguing. It's a team that's fun to watch because you don't know what you're going to get. They're a team that historically hasn't been there except that one AFC playoff run when they had Blake Bortles as quarterback. But now you're going to have Trevor Lawrence, kind of the future of this franchise, trying to put it together while you take on Cowboys and Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard, and the boys out there, America's team nonetheless. So I think the Dallas Cowboys are a team in this one that are going to be dangerous, a team to watch out for. They got a kind of scrappy win last week versus the Texans, and I think they might have a little bit of a wake-up call. They bounced. So before the Texans, they played the Colts, and then won 54-19. They kind of hit a lull, and then had a slow game. So, like looking back historically for the Cowboys, they played the Vikings. They won 40-3. Then they played the Cowboys, and then the Cowboys played the Giants. They won by 8. Then they played the Colts, won massive. Then they played the Texans, won by 4. So here's where I'm at with this one. Trend shows Cowboys are going to explode this week. And I'm okay with guessing that the Cowboys will explode. I like the Cowboys a lot. I'm not a big Jaguar supporter out there. I like Dak Prescott. I like Tony Pollard. I like Ezekiel Elliott to an extent with this system that they're running. And I really think the Cowboys can get it done this weekend. I think the Cowboys, they're currently favored 4 points. It was originally 6.5. A lot of money coming in on the Jaguars. But I would actually prefer this as a Cowboys better because it gives you more chances. If they win by just 6, they win by 2 field goals, you still cover. So I think the Cowboys are going to be the favorites here, and I think the Cowboys are who I'd go with. I think Cowboys win this game, and I think they win this game by 6, at least. 2 field goals at least. So I think the Cowboys are going to get this one. Then we're going to transition to the Falcons and Saints, an NFC South matchup. Cowboys and Saints, kind of a big one here. We're going to transition for that one. Not Cowboys, Saints. I apologize. Falcons and Saints. Falcons and Saints. We're going to be seeing a young quarterback for the Falcons and Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder getting his second start for the Atlanta Falcons, which is kind of crazy to think about. Desmond Ridder, a young guy, kind of the future of the Falcons franchise. They played Marcus Mariota a lot this year. just to kind of get him going, get him smoothed into the system, just not to throw him out there right away. But I really think Desmond Ridder is going to be able to go. And then you have the Saints. It's just the Saints are just a tricky team. Andy Dalton starting for them, but then they've had so much other things going on, so much other nonsense. It's just a team that just doesn't look good. This Saints squad, a Saints team that has been depleted, the Saints team that's just kind of been left for dead once Sean Payton got out of there with their financial salary cap situation. And then you have Marcus Mariota finding the bench for Desmond Ridder to step into the starting role. And we're having Desmond Ridder making his first start. The guy at University of Cincinnati, a household name for those locally, and it didn't come without controversy. We're seeing a lot of drama with Mariota, who has been the quarterback originally. Mariota left the team once he found out that Desmond Ridder was going to be the starter. He was not happy about it whatsoever. But Coach Arthur Smith of the Falcons has saying the team and everybody else is wholeheartedly believing in Desmond Ridder and are excited for him to get this start. And I think the Falcons made a good move here. If you're the Falcons, your season's done for the most part. But there's no chance you're making the playoffs, really. You're just kind of depleted all year. You're building for the future. You're trying to bounce back. And this Falcons team, they're third in the NFC South currently. But this Falcons team, being third in the NFC South, means you have an extremely poor record. The Falcons currently are 5-8 behind the Panthers. So, I mean, they're still in the hunt, but I don't think the Falcons are going to make it. I think the Buccaneers will sort things out eventually. But this Falcons team, building for the future, Desmond Ridder, that future franchise guy, and they want to get him as many reps as possible for next year so they know what they have. So they know, do we need to make a move at quarterback? Can we trust Desmond Ridder? Do we just need to go out and get talent to surround Desmond Ridder? Things of that sort. But I think Desmond Ridder will come in this week, and I think he'll have his moments of struggle. The Saints are a team that's been historically good on defense, had guys like Tom Brady had their numbers. So I think the Saints could cause some problems for Desmond Ridder. But I don't trust the Saints team enough to beat the Falcons, I think. Vegas is looking at it with New Orleans projected to win by 4, covered by 4 and things like that. But there's something about the Falcons and Desmond Ridder. It might just be because I'm a guy from the Midwest area who watched that Cincinnati football team do some incredible things in the past, but under Luke Fickell and Desmond Ridder at the helm of the offense. It just might be me, but something about Desmond Ridder is kind of drawing me to this game. And I think Desmond Ridder could get the job done. I think Desmond Ridder has the ability to do something special for this team and kind of get something going. So I'm going to go for Desmond Ridder and the Falcons to win this game that as well covered. I think Desmond Ridder gets a win in his first NFL start and makes his first kind of attempt at everything and could kind of show hasn't had a franchise quarterback since Matt Ryan. Granted, it hasn't been too long, but they need a guy who can get them to that next level. Matt Ryan had some solid years, solid production, had an incredible year, got into the Super Bowl one time. But outside of that, it was kind of just average elite. It just need a guy who can take you to a Super Bowl. I'm not saying Desmond Ridder is going to do that this year or next year, but he very well could down the line. We're going to transition one more game here before we take a quick break. We're going to look at the Lions and Jets, the last game in this 1 o'clock window. Lions and Jets. Lions coming into this one as 1-point favorites currently now. Initially opened up as Jets -3. That was because a lot of people thought Mike White was going to be playing early on. Mike White, story around him, he went to 10 to 15 different doctors to try and get cleared for this game versus the Lions. As we saw Mike White, he got drilled last week. He went out for 2 plays, came back into the game, tried to play again during halftime, got x-rays and scans on his rib cage. Look at him. They found out during the game that he was messed up bad. And Mike White said, no, I'm playing still. Took a couple more big shots. And then right after the game, as he walked off to the field, they loaded him into an ambulance and took him straight to the hospital. Mike White has a special ability in him. The guys in that locker room love him. The guys in that locker room, from what the stories are saying, hate Zach Wilson, and Zach Wilson's going to be starting in this one. So you have a bunch of interesting dynamics going on. You want to win a game for your guy, Mike White, who can't play, and he's done everything and everything, to try and be there for you. Whereas Zach Wilson's team, the team does not enjoy being the quarterback of this squad. So a couple of interesting dynamics going on here, but at the end of the day, I think the Lions are too good, and they will beat a depleted Jets team without their quarterback, Mike White. So I think the Lions are going to win this one. Even if Mike White was starting, I think I'd still go with the Lions in this. I just like the Lions this year. I know their defense hasn't been their best in moments, but Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Smith, Jamal Williams, things like that, those guys are pretty legit talents in the NFL. And I think they're going to be able to get this thing done. Motor City Dan Campbell of the Detroit Lions. It's going to take the Lions to 7-7 this week, I believe. And obviously, with the current line, Detroit by 1. So Detroit wins in any fashion, most likely will cover, as long as they don't win by a late game field goal, just to win by 1. So it gets a little tricky there. But I think the Lions will get this one. Lions, as long as they win by 2 points, they move on with a victory here. So I'm going to go with the Lions on this one. But that's going to lead us into the 5 o'clock hour. We're going to take a quick break. 4:55 in Richmond, Indiana. It is 37 degrees outside. Feels like 32. We'll be back with you in a few moments after this quick break. Stay with us on WECI 91.5, Richmond's Public Radio. Welcome back to WECI 91.5 FM, Richmond's Public Radio. I'm your host, Tyler Smith of the Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith Sports Talk Show and Sports Podcast. We're streaming here live from WECI 91.5 FM, Richmond's Public Radio. We just took a little quick break. We're going to get back into some NFL picks covering the 4 o'clock slate and forward on Sunday afternoon, Sunday, December 18th. The first game we're going to get back to here, we're going to take a moment to check out the Cardinals and Broncos game, a battle of two backup quarterbacks. We're going to have Colt McCoy, and a name that many of you probably aren't familiar with here on the WECI 91.5 FM as well, just in general for NFL fans. Russell Wilson is going to be out at quarterback this weekend, still in concussion protocol. And now we're going to be seeing a new quarterback step into the role. A man, Brett Rypien. Brett Rypien for the Denver Broncos is going to be stepping into this one, being the starting quarterback in this one. Brett Rypien, a guy who many of you probably never heard of. Brett Rypien, a guy coming out, hasn't really played too much in the NFL. A guy out of Boise State, a quarterback who just can kind of make things happen. 26 years old, Canadian-born NFL player. You don't hear too many of those. Well, signed with the Broncos in 2019 as an undrafted free agent. So a guy who's been around the Broncos organization for quite some time. Granted, now the Broncos, they have a new head ball coach. But a guy who's been familiar with the Broncos for quite some time, sitting in behind plenty of quarterbacks. But now the opportunity to get his start. Last week, came in relief of Russell Wilson with the head injury. Went 1 for 1, 16 yards, 50% completion percentage. So limited use there. Limited use. For the Cardinals, you have Colt McCoy. But this game's going to be very interesting for those of you watching because it's two backup quarterbacks. Many people don't think, I'm going to sit down and watch a game between two backup quarterbacks. You can watch one of the best quarterbacks of college football all time between Colt McCoy, who is that man of the Cardinals, who's going to be starting this week. And then you also have the Broncos here as well. Both teams reeling, trying to find some success. Arizona Cardinals 4-9, Kyler Murray tore his ACL on Monday Night Football versus the Patriots. And then you have the Denver Broncos, who are 3-10 coming into this one. The biggest story here you have to think is who has the better defense. You have to start looking at that because you think, two backup quarterbacks, which defense are going to show out and kind of win the game for the team? In that case, it's the Broncos. But we just don't know much about Brett Rypien. I just don't know who to choose here. It's a tough one out there. It's a game I'd stay away from any betting, personally. I'd stay as far away from this one as I could. So many unpredictables, so many unknowns, especially revolving the quarterback position for the Broncos. But this is a team as well who didn't really like Russell Wilson from what it seems like from media reports coming out. So you have to think maybe they like Rypien better. Rypien's been around. He's been a dude in the locker room for quite some time. Maybe Brett Rypien's a guy who we prefer. If you're a Broncos player, Broncos veteran, things like that, people who have been there since the 2019 year when he got signed. Vegas, the odds coming in at this one had Denver favored by 3.5. To open up as -1. But this news broke just hours ago, so I'm not sure if the lines have gotten adjusted or not yet. So we're going to pull it up real fast. But this game between these two teams is one that'd be kind of fun to watch, I would say. Fun to watch, but not fun to, I'd say, gamble upon if you were somebody who would do that and partake in those activities. But the Broncos and Cardinals game is going to be a battle of two backup quarterbacks, which is always kind of interesting to see. Two guys you don't get to see too often. Currently, the live odds, the Broncos are still favored by 1.5. It's a line where I don't know what to do exactly. Vegas knows that this is going to be a low-scoring game. The over-under at 36.5. That's extremely low for the NFL. That's saying, Broncos are favored by 1.5, so they're thinking that this game is 20-16, something of the sort there, where we got to go. It's just a very low-scoring game, 14-17, somewhere between those, 3-point game or even less in this one. I think this is going to be a game where Denver is at home. I think a loud stadium helps the Broncos at home here. But Colt McCoy is a veteran quarterback who's been around, balled out in his moments when he's gotten the opportunity here as well. So that's why I'm going to ride with the Cardinals in this one. I'm more familiar with Colt McCoy. I know what I'm going to get out of Colt McCoy. And Colt McCoy's always gotten the job done for me when he comes in as a backup quarterback for this Cardinals team. So I'm going to go with the Arizona Cardinals here, who are plus 1.5. And it's good money. I mean, you're getting your odds back on that one. So I think the Cardinals are worth the flyer. Would I go out and say, yo, yes, this is the best thing to go do? Absolutely not. But I think this Cardinals game is a solid option to look at if you're trying to do something a little more risky, maybe throw a parlay out there when you need to tie in something that can significantly boost something. So I think this Cardinals team can do it. And then we're going to transition to the second 4 o'clock window game at 4:05 p.m. We're going to have the Raiders taking on the Patriots. Raiders are at home, and they're going to be favored currently at -0.5. So this is going to be a game that they really look as a toss-up, but they're going to give a slight edge to the Raiders in this one with the Patriots. But here's the biggest story going on right now. Bill Belichick facing his assistant. That's what a lot of people are missing right now, if you're not paying attention to it too closely. That's what the story's been missing. Josh McDaniels, former offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. And then you also have Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, in my personal opinion, taking on one of his own. Just think about it. When you see this big-time era head coach, think of a Nick Saban. That's the only other real comparison you can think of in this moment, current modern-day era. Does Nick Saban lose to his assistants? No. I can only count on my hand one or two times, where he's lost to one of his own assistants. And the same with Bill Belichick. His assistants have gotten fired at other places, and he brings them back, a la Patricia Joe Judge. So I think the Patriots go into Las Vegas, and they get a win. I don't think it's a pretty win by any means, but I think they win. So I'm going to go with the Patriots money line as well. You look at the spread, the Patriots win. It's obvious to go with the spread as well. So I think the Patriots are going to win this one too. And then we're going to move into the later 4 o'clock window. That 4:25 kickoff is the Titans taking on the Chargers in a AFC matchup between the AFC South, AFC West. The Chargers are currently, I'm trying to see I think this one's more of a pick 'em toss-up, I believe. But lines recently changed to Chargers favored by 3 later in the week. It opened up a lot tighter, about 1 point for the Chargers. So it's kind of opened up, leaning towards more of the Chargers. And I think that's a good choice as well. I think this Chargers team has a more explosive offense than the Tennessee Titans. I think the Tennessee Titans, as we mentioned last week, a dominant run team, a team who can never really get behind in games, because then that means they have to rely on Ryan Tannehill's arm to get them back into contests. And that's something I'm not comfortable with personally. I really like Justin Herbert. I like Austin Eckler, who's been one of the best running backs in fantasy football if you pay attention to fantasy football stats at all. And then you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Mike Williams has been banged up recently. Hopefully they haven't ruled him out yet this week, but hopefully maybe he can sneak back into the lineup this week. But with or without him, I think the LA Chargers do take a hold of this one. I think they're going to win this one. They're currently -3, -152 money line. I think the Chargers are favored heavily in this one to an extent, looking at the recent line shifts. But I'm really going to go with the LA Chargers here personally as well. I think the LA Chargers are going to be able to get the job done at home versus a Tennessee Titans team that just doesn't have the offense to keep up with them, I think. I think a guy like Khalil Mack could very well have a big game. So I'm going to roll with the LA Chargers in this one. And then we're going to shift into a game that a lot of my local fans are going to be paying attention to quite a bit. It's going to be the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Joe Burrow taking on the GOAT, Tom Brady. The GOAT knocked off by Mr. Irrelevant last week in his hometown. And people said on the live telecast, and he even came out afterwards, Tom Brady bought over 200+ tickets for family members from the San Francisco Bay Area to come in and watch him play versus the 49ers. Just to watch him get beat by 4 scores by Mr. Irrelevant. The GOAT losing to Mr. Irrelevant. And now I think the next man up, the heir to the throne, in my opinion, Joe Burrow, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. 4:25, a game that really could have been flexed into that primetime slot, I think. But I think it should have been, but it obviously is not, being as that 4:25 kickoff game. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals will win this one. The Cincinnati Bengals are favored by 3.5 points, but I think the Bengals will win this one by a touchdown. So I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals. They win a massive game in hopes to be the number 1 seed in the AFC North. The number 1 spot in the AFC North, chasing the number 1 seed overall in the AFC playoff picture. Joe Burrow will have a massive game in this one, I think. First time taking on Tom Brady. I think Joe Burrow can do it in this one. make an incredible game out of this. Then we move on to kind of a game, kind of a grudge match, NFC East contest. The New York Giants are going to be taking on the Washington Commanders. New York Giants are favored. New York Giants are being given 4.5 points. They're being given 4.5 points, and the Commanders are favored by 4.5. The Commanders by 4.5 versus the Giants team that's really done well so far this year. A team that's surprised quite a bit of people in this year's NFL season. Not a lot of people thought the Giants would be doing well with a new head coach. Dable, I believe, is the head coach out there. It's just been a team where this Giants has been surprising to us. They're a team that should have been humming along quite a bit ago as well because of Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is an absolute animal in the backfield and the passing game in general for this New York Giants side. But both teams come to this contest 7-5-1. They met, 2 weeks ago on December 4th? Yeah, December 4th, 12 days ago from now. And then they're going to play on the 18th, 2 weeks exactly. They tied 20-20 in that game at home for the Giants. So now the Giants have to head over to Washington. Not too far of a trip, but they're going to have to take on the Commanders on the road. And I think the Giants can very well get this one. If we look back at that previous game, the 20-20 tie, Taylor Heineke played a fine game, 27-41, 275 for 2 tuds. Brian Robinson exploded in that one, though, for sure, as well as Terry McLaurin. So if you're a Giants fan, the biggest thing here is to limit Terry McLaurin and limit Brian Robinson and make Taylor Heineke beat you. Then if you're the Giants, you had Daniel Jones go for 25 passing, 25-31, 200 yards, tud. And then Saquon Barkley only 63 yards. Daniel Jones with the surprising 71. So if you're the New York Giants, you need to get Saquon Barkley going a whole lot earlier and a whole lot sooner. I think this game truly comes down to Saquon Barkley, in my personal opinion. I think Saquon Barkley is the reason that the Giants are going to be able to win this one. And I'm going to go with the Giants here at +4. So I think the Giants, being the underdogs in this one, I think they're going to be able to get it. I think the Giants are going to be able to get it. +4.5 is an even better line as it just recently got updated. So they're saying that the Commanders must win by 5 points. And I don't think they win at all. I'm going to roll with the Giants on this one. And that's a good game if you're trying to make some money off of it. I think the Giants very well can do it. As we shift into that 8 o'clock slot now, Sunday night, 8:21 p.m. Eastern kickoff, we have the LA Rams taking on the Green Bay Packers, a game that, looking on earlier in this season, should have been a game that we were all super excited for, seeing that the NFL schedule makers put them in as a primetime game this late in the year. You would have thought that the reigning Super Bowl champions and back-to-back MVP Aaron Rodgers would both be wheeling and dealing at this point, but arguably enough, they haven't been doing so. Right now, the Rams are at the Rams are not favored. They're being given 6.5 points. So the Rams are expected to be 6.5-point dogs, while the Packers are 6.5 favorites. And I just don't know if I can trust this Packers side. But also, on the other hand, Baker Mayfield is just, his second week with the team. So it's a very interesting contest. Going on the road to Lambeau, I'm sure there's going to be some weather going on too. I'm going to lean with, I would say the Packers win this one. But I think if I go the spread, I'm going to go with the Rams on the spread. I think the Rams do a good enough job in this one to cover 6.5, but I think the Packers win this one overall. And then we move into the Monday Night Football game of this week. It's going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets. So moving with this one, we have Jacksonville Jaguars, New York Jets. It's a tough one. It's a very tough one here. Monday night game. We have Jaguars, Jets. It's just an interesting pick here. I think we talked about this one a bit earlier as well, but just rounding up the rounding up the clock here, rounding out the table for Monday. What is this one going to be on Monday? Let's give you a date here. I think this is a future game, but I think the Rams are going to get this one versus the Pack. I think the Rams, as we mentioned earlier, cover versus the Packers. And then Jacksonville Jaguars versus the New York Jets is one where the New York Jets will beat the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. That's going to wrap it up on the NFL side of things, though. We're going to transition to some college football bowl games. I know a bunch of people pay attention to those. A lot of people will be watching those as well. Just trying to kill some time during the holiday season. Bonding over some family. It's never a bad idea to turn on some football, in my personal opinion. And we're going to cover some of the games that happened recently. Going on is the Miami Redhawks game. Right, previously happened earlier on this week. As I mentioned, we talked about this one a little bit on the last show. And we kind of talked about on the last show that we thought UAB would win this one, but it'd be extremely close. The Miami Redhawks were put on a good fight. I was able to watch this team in person. This team has a bright future ahead of them. They had a pro-style NFL quarterback who was Gabbert, brother of an NFL QB. Just something different when you come from an NFL family at the quarterback position. There's just something you can't really put your finger on it, but they're just different in that way. They know what it's like to be in the locker room, be in commanding presence, and do that whole thing. Just the extras that you don't really see. You just can't really put your finger on it, but they just do it. But with a young quarterback, Avion Smith, for this Miami Redhawks side, they lost to UAB 24-20 in the Bahamas Bowl. UAB was favored by 10.5 points, and Miami limited it to a 4-point game. So Miami put up a good fight, a better fight than Vegas thought they would. It's a shame to see the Miami Redhawks fall in this one, come to 6-6 at the end of their season now. But Miami Redhawks, a good season. It was an average season to an extent, but a good season building towards the future. You didn't want to see your established quarterback get hurt early on. After speaking with Luke Westpoli of Miami Redhawks, he covers a bunch of their games, his broadcast, play-by-play, etc. But he's a guy who's kind of mentioned to me as well that this Miami Redhawks side was a team that once they realized that their quarterback that was initially the starter was hurt, handing the keys to Avion Smith, that they were generally and kind of wishfully building for the future at that point, trying to get him some growth, get him some reps and confidence underneath his belt. They also didn't really run an offense that was designed for him as well, because you have to think they ran an offense designed for QB1, and Avion Smith is a much more mobile passer as well. Can get out and run quite a bit. So we saw that in flashes, and I think that this Miami Redhawks side is a team to watch out for next year in the MAC. But we're going to move into some of our but our bowl games on this first weekend here. It's going to be Saturday, December 17th. We have Cincinnati Bearcats taking on Louisville. Luke Fickell recently leaving. Louisville also have some head coaching drama too, moving around quite a bit. They just recently hired head coach out of Purdue to be their new head coach for the Cincinnati-Louisville ball game. And he's going to be their head coach for the future as well. So this one's going to be fun and interesting to pay attention to. It's just bowl season's always fun because of the drama and headlines, which is always intriguing to look at. As we take a look at the Cincinnati Bearcats versus the Louisville Cardinals bowl game, it's just one of those where looking at it from outside in, if you're not a fan of either side, is it a game that you're like dying to watch or look at? But looking at it right now with the drama and storylines, it's going to be fun to watch. Cincinnati Bearcats opened up as 1.5-point favorites, and currently now Louisville are 1.5-point favorites. The BetMGM kind of processing and servers and all their statistic makers, they're giving Louisville, they'll win the game 53% of the time to 47% of the time, as Louisville and Cincinnati take each other on in the Fenway Bowl. The Fenway Bowl at Fenway Park in Boston, home of the Boston Red Sox. I think it's a very cool spot to host a bowl game. It's going to be a little bit of a cold one, though. I was seeing some pictures early on with a lot of snow around the sidelines there. But this is going to be a fun game to watch. I think it's a good one to open up that Saturday slate with, kicking off at 11 a.m. on ESPN. Good one to watch if you're a local supporter as well. But Louisville is going to be favored in this one. I'm going to have to roll with Louisville on this one, too. Cincinnati Bearcats losing their head coach, Luke Fickell, who I think has done more for their program rather than the head coach of Louisville. So I think Cincinnati's going to see some lumps in the road on this one, I think, as they kind of round out a season here. Going 9-3, they'll probably end up, if they've lost in this game, 9-4. Cincinnati team kind of rolling off their college football playoff death last year to the hands of Alabama. It's just an unfortunate sight to see, I say, if you are a Cincinnati Bearcats fan. Then we're going to move into Florida, Oregon State. Florida, Oregon State, this game going on. Oregon State is the clear favorite here, favored by 10 points over Florida. And I think that's a fair line. I'm not a big fan of this Florida Gators side. The Florida Gators have had a lot of controversy and dramas around them this year. A lot of players getting in trouble at the end of the season Unfortunately, you never want to see that, but nonetheless, it happened. We have to acknowledge it a little bit there. Taking on what the CFP thinks is number 14th team in the nation, Oregon State, who had a big win over Oregon at the end of the year there in the Pac-12. Taking on the Las Vegas Bowl, I believe Pat McAfee's actually going to be calling this game if you're a big Pat McAfee fan anywhere throughout the nation or here, especially in Indiana. But the Oregon State Beavers, who are 9-3 on the season, will be taking on the Florida Gators, who are 6-6. Florida Gators, just a team that hasn't accomplished much this year, barely scraping by being bowl eligible. And the Oregon State Beavers side, who's kind of handled the Pac-12 to an extent in their previous history. Played a tough USC team, only lost by 3. Beat Oregon by 4 on a late comeback, and then suffered a loss to Washington by 3, and just lost to a Utah team that ended up doing very well in the Pac-12 championship. So it's just a team that struggled a little bit in some spots, but a team overall has had a strong season, looking to end strong as well. I think Oregon State will win this one handily. And a thing to look out for here for the future, if you're DJ Ugalele coming out of Clemson, entering the transfer portal potentially, Oregon State is a place that if they can land a big-time quarterback in the portal, they could go on a run next year. They have an amazing defense, an established defense, a younger head coach who's had a lot of success in his time, consistently getting better every single year. This Oregon State side could be fun to watch in the near future as they win the Las Vegas Bowl tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Next bowl game on the slate here is going to be Washington State, Fresno State. Going to brush over this one quickly. Fresno State 9-4, Washington State 7-5. Vegas has Fresno by 4. I think Fresno State's going to take this one. Fresno State 9-4 in the year, Washington State 7-5. Team that really struggled in the Pac-12 this year in Washington State. So I'm going to go with Fresno State in this one. And then Rice and Southern Miss. Again, pay attention to Frank Gore Jr. In this one. Name that sounds very familiar to a lot of you NFL fans out there. Say Southern Mississippi, now USM, minus 6.5 favorite now. It opened up as a Rice minus 5.5 point favorite, so a lot of movement in this one. Rice 5-7, Southern Miss 6-6. It's a game that's really a toss-up here, but I'm going to go Southern Miss, potentially getting the win, but I think Rice might cover in this one as well. I'm going to move into the kind of the big game on Saturday on ABC, the SMU versus BYU. SMU 7-5, BYU 7-5. Opening line was BYU by 2.5, and now it's SMU by 4. This is a game that has a significant amount of movement. It's going to be a game later on ABC, nationally televised game. So a lot of more eyes on it than other college bowl games going on. It's just going to be an interesting game to see. It's going to be the New Mexico Bowl going on here between BYU and SMU. And it's just an interesting game to take a peek at. If you take a look at kind of the spread stats, so it's -4 over under 64. BYU is with plus money, +4. I think SMU is going to cover with their passing attack. BYU is a more balanced squad, for sure. They have a more balanced run, balanced pass, stronger defense. But I think SMU's offense is really going to carry them in this one. So I'm going to look for SMU, to win in this one. Then we go to the late game, the 9:15 on ESPN. North Texas taking on Boise State. The game that is kind of between two programs. There's in-between things. And I think with conference realignment going on here shortly and about to officially happen, Boise State, a team that could be on the outside looking in of a lot of things going on. A Boise State team, as many of you remember, myself growing up, Statue of Liberty play versus Oklahoma. Boise State team that's really been kind of efficient throughout the history in the past, and that kind of that group of 5 team that's always been more dangerous than others. So I really think that this team here moving on is going to be Boise State winning this one. Boise State is now a 10.5 point favorite. North Texas opened up at 7.5. So that is almost 18 points of movement. So that means something crazy going on. And that Vegas extremely likes Boise State. They had a lot of money come in on Boise State, and they're trying to kind of salvage themselves a bit. So I think Boise State's going to take away this one. But that's going to wrap up some of our weekend slate of college football bowl games. And now we're going to transition into the greatest sporting event of them all. I'm going to probably receive some grief and hate about that one. But we're going to transition into the FIFA World Cup. The FIFA World Cup. So tomorrow we have Croatia taking on Morocco in the third place game. Two teams that just were depleted and left for dead, I think. Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, Croatia will be taking on Morocco. A Morocco side, the first ever African nation to reach the semifinal of the World Cup, has the ability to be the only Moroccan side, only African side in history to be a third place finish, which is no thing to laugh about, really. In the Croatia team, a Cinderella of last World Cup in the Euros. In this World Cup, another Cinderella side. Croatia and Morocco, two Cinderellas to an extent. Morocco finally let up their first goal by an opponent in every single contest leading up to it versus Argentina. Not against Argentina, against France, my apologies. So this Moroccan side has been a tough side to play against, and Croatia, kind of the end of a golden generation, whereas Morocco is more youthful. Croatia, the end of a generation with Luka Modric, arguably one of the greatest center midfielders of all time, with Xavi, Iniesta, and Luka Modric being right there as well. Up in that conversation of like a top 25 player of all time, really. It's probably a player you haven't heard a lot. Guy who's played for Real Madrid, won several Champions League titles, La Liga championships, and much more. Croatia, in this one, I really think Morocco is going to get this one. I hate to say that. Morocco is currently the underdog in this one. They're at plus 104, Croatia minus 138. But the reason why I'm going to lean more with Morocco here is the emotional factor and the emotional toll. This Croatian side, their goal and hope and dream was to win the World Cup final. Granted, that's what every team's goal is when you enter the World Cup. You want to win the World Cup final. But this Croatian side was trying to do anything and everything to win it for their captain, Luka Modric. Whereas Moroccan side, they already surpassed expectation. Many didn't even expect them to make it out of their group. So this Moroccan side, kind of just playing with whatever they have. They're playing a little bit of house money, I would say. This Moroccan side, emotionally free, I think. They're a little upset, obviously, but more emotionally free than this Croatian side. This Croatian side probably feels a little bit guilty and emotionally taxed and drained as they played so many matches with extra time and penalty kicks this year. So I'm going to lean more towards Morocco in this one. I think Morocco will win it. And we take a look at this game between Croatia and Morocco. More of like the favorite goal scorers in this one. You have Andro Karhamovic, a couple of guys here. But really what we're going to be looking at here is a game where for Morocco, Ziyech, a winger who plays for Chelsea in the Premier League, and an outside back, a right back named Hakimi, who plays for Paris Saint-Germain, teammates with Kylian Mbappe, Lionel Messi, Neymar Jr., Donnarumma, Keylor Navas, Marquinhos, lots of top-level flight players. And he's one of the only players on that Paris Saint-Germain side, not from one of the top 5 nations in the world. And I think Hakimi Ziyech and Ziyech, I think Hakimi and Ziyech are going to be the reason why this Moroccan side takes over and wins this one. But now we're going to switch in. The game's going to have some more eyes on it. And if you're not a soccer fan, stay tuned in, please. I'm going to try to persuade you a little bit here with why you need to be paying attention to this one. So take a moment, and if you're the audience right now listening, close your eyes and just think of like some of the greatest athletes of all time in your favorite sport, whatever that is. Just think of some of them. Some of the names that might come to your mind: LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, Mike Trout. Just think of them. Think of those names. A lot of names will be coming to your head. Messi, Ronaldo, etc., etc. There's so many. So many. Now start thinking about some of the best players like Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley and much more who have never won an NBA championship or a championship in general within their sport. And now we come up with Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi, the greatest of all time, the greatest of a generation, a cultural icon for all boys and girls, recently born to late in their life. Lionel Messi has the opportunity to cement his legacy here on Sunday at 10 a.m. in Qatar. And then on the other hand, it really shouldn't be a David and Goliath comparison, but it really feels like that. David is Argentina, and they have the greatest player of all time on their side. And this French side is Goliath, a 5, 6, 7-headed monster in the attack with arguably one of the best young talents in the world since Messi and or Ronaldo, and Kylian Mbappe, with the most underrated striker and forward and goal scorer of a generation in Olivier Giroud, who is now the leading scorer for France. He's won it all in Europe. He's won the Champions League. He's won the Europa League. He's won a World Cup. He's won a Euro. He's won a Club Champions League and won a Club World Cup as well. A guy who's just been underrated throughout his entire career. And they're bringing in reinforcements now too. The French Football Federation reached out to Real Madrid to see if they can get Karim Benzema to be eligible to play in the World Cup. Karim Benzema has been fighting some nagging injury, and Real Madrid expressed a lot of interest in preserving Karim Benzema so he wouldn't worsen his injury. Karim Benzema just won the Ballon d'Or, which is the award that goes to the greatest soccer player in the world, throughout Europe, throughout Africa, throughout China, throughout the States, wherever, North America, South America. He was the greatest player in the world who won the Ballon d'Or. An incredible season with Real Madrid. They won the league. They won the Champions League. A forward who has not played in this World Cup, but very well could start in this World Cup. And then you have Ousmane Dembele, who is a Tyreek Hill-esque player, for those of you who watch the NFL. The fastest player in the world who can do it with his left foot and his right foot, and is just dangerous beyond imagination. And you have Kylian Mbappe on the other side of the pitch. Kylian Mbappe, as I mentioned, the youngest player on this French side, a young generational talent, kind of like a Patrick Mahomes if you're an NFL fan. Think about that. Patrick Mahomes is a good comparison for him if you're an NFL fan. Having the chance, going up against the GOAT, a la Tom Brady, I guess you would say. But I think Messi's story is a little different than Tom Brady, but for comparison's sake, I think it works. If you look at Mbappe as Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Messi together in the same eyes, it's like when Mahomes played Tom Brady, you just couldn't get past him a little bit in those AFC Championship runs, and then he finally gets the Super Bowl title. And Mbappe has a World Cup title. And he wasn't like the sole reason they won. France could have done it without him, but now he's carrying this team now. And it could be his World Cup title, not someone else's, where he's like, I did this. It was me. And there's an award out there called the Golden Boot. The Golden Boot is between Messi and Mbappe now, the two leading goal scorers in this tournament. So it's kind of like the Super Bowl MVP to an extent, where you're looking at the two best players and they can go at it. Mbappe has the ability to cement himself in the GOAT conversation and just kind of set up his career, even though Mbappe is not even 25 years old. It's just an incredible game that we're going to be able to have on our hands. It's not the World Cup final we dreamt of by any stretch. The dream World Cup final for many of you out there would have been Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal taking on Messi of Argentina. But instead, we're seeing France take on Argentina. And what stands out here is Mbappe, 23 years old. Sensational, long career ahead of him. Messi, nearing the end. He's on the back nine. He's on 16. He's on 17. About to be at the end. And arguably, he's playing some of his best football, some of his best soccer. He has the ability to cement his legacy. He has the ability to mark this generation as one of the best soccering generations of all time, including himself, Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Luka Modric, and so on. He has the ability to cement his legacy as an all-time great. It would be the difference between him being argued in the top 5 of all time to being the clear-cut number 1 of all time, 0 questions asked for eternity. That's what we have the opportunity to witness on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern. If I were you, I would set aside 2.5 hours on Sunday to watch this Argentina-France game. Or record the game, turn off your phone, make sure you don't get the notifications, and try your best. Because this is going to be a game of a lifetime. The ability to watch Messi work his magic, chase a childhood dream, and put kind of the final touch on his legacy and just prove it that he is the greatest of all time versus a footballing giant in France, a five-headed monster, you could even say, with Mbappe, Olivier Giroud, Ousmane Dembele, Antoine Griezmann, and Hugo Lloris, and many more. They have the ability for this Argentine side to get their generational GOAT, the player that every single person on this Argentine side looked up to growing up their entire life, except for McAllister, who maybe looked up to his father, but I guarantee you he still idolized Lionel Messi. But Lionel Messi has the ability to cement himself and his legacy for eternity. And Mbappe and France have the ability to go back-to-back, and not only go back-to-back, but get Mbappe on kind of this sensational trajectory of his career and send kind of near the end of their golden generation. Some of these guys very well could be their last World Cup. And if they win this World Cup, they might choose to make it their last, but they definitely have some time ahead of them too. But could make this their last, but go back-to-back and get out. That's what we have here on Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And if I were you, I would sit in and watch this game because you have the ability to watch two nations, a cultural icon, cement his legacy, and do something incredible on Sunday. There's no better way to explain it. There's no way to explain it, but it's just magical what you can see on Sunday. I know a bunch of fans out there only paid attention to the World Cup when the United States was in, or maybe for a couple fanboy teams, or maybe, I'm going to support the underdog here, the Cinderella. This is a game where the entire world now, Ronaldo fans and Messi fans, who hate each other and despise each other. The best comparison for that is if you're a Michael Jordan fan and a LeBron James fan. And if you think MJ's the GOAT or LeBron's the GOAT, and say one of them got knocked out, one of them got eliminated, now, because of the circumstances at hand, you're rooting for your arch nemesis to an extent. You're rooting for the guy that you've hated your entire life, potentially, if you're a Ronaldo fan. And now you're seeing two sides come together to support one side, which is Argentina. This game's going to be electric. It's going to be a game to watch. They're projecting over 2.5 goals, somewhere like 3 goals in this game. And it very well may go extra time, very well may go penalty kicks. But this is one to watch because not only does this happen every 4 years, but this very well could be the last time we get to see the greatest of all time lace up his boots in a World Cup. And with that, we're going to send you on out of here. We have the Oldies Show coming up next. 2 legends who've been on WECI 91.5 FM, Richmond's public radio, for quite some time. They run a great program, run a great show. Stick around, listen to them. We're going to sneak out of here at 5:39 Eastern on Friday, December 16th. The weather outside, 37 degrees. Still feels like 32. A little bit of a chilly one out there. Be safe with your evening commute. Have a great weekend. We'll catch you guys next week and enjoy a happy holiday season. And until next time, it's Tyler Smith with Keeping It Real with Tyler Smith Sports Talk Show. Stay with us, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Thank you all for watching. Tune in next time.